multi-sectoral forum. This forum will begin on Monday.
As ODM, we have our policies, and ODM has decided to go for talks to negotiate in a wider so that the next government being formed after this cabinet has been dissolved is a government of national unity.
You have to think, leaders, please stop the psychophancy. That is what Gen Zs are saying. Please think for yourself.
Tukaongea tukasema tuweke kongamano ya watu, dialogue na Bwana Ruto, ili kuwa ni people's dialogue. Sio atikwenda kuongea na Bwana Ruto na UDA. Sio mambo atikwenda kukaa na hao watu kuongea ati mtapatia sisi nini, ati tupatie hii mkono, patie sisi paja, sisi mguu. Sisi mambo watu wakwenda kuomba.
The days when Raila could play games with us are over. We are not going to allow this thing that he is trying to do again. He wants to feed on the blood of the children of this country. He did his part, but it does not have to be that he only fights when he's out of government and he becomes part of every other government. He extended Moi's stay in power. He extended Kibaki's stay in power. He extended Uhuru's stay in power. Now he wants to extend Ruto's stay in power against the wishes of Kenyans. We have to call him out.
If there were consultations about having a national dialogue, my view is those who are hurried and there wasn't a full consultation.
Talking to Ruto is to assure his survival. Ruto is the one who is going to gain because he'll be in power until 2027. Lakini Gen Z wametuonyesha kwamba with Gen Z we don't have to wait until 2027.
Kenya became the first country where a presidential election has been nullified. But we still came out of it and went for a fresh election, and we emerged stronger. So we have had a moment where our young people have also expressed themselves on how they know best. And I want to tell you the government of Kenya has listened and it has initiated processes of tackling some of the concerns.
Vijana wameingia ndani ya bunge mpaka wakaenda kwa kiti cha Bwana Spika. Wakasema ya kwamba hawana imani na bunge. Wakawaita hao MPs. Sasa vile nasema bunge hii sasa there's a vote of no confidence by the people. Bunge hii ndio kwanza iende.
Tunataka kumwekea baba shida zote. Sema baba, ukisema right ni right, ukisema left ni left. Baba is only one life to lead and we have to protect him. You have to think, leaders, please stop the psychophancy. That is what Gen Zs are saying. Please think for yourself. Think on your feet. Vijana wanafikiria on their feet.
If we have to go for dialogue, number one, we want these people to be compensated, their families. Number two, wale maskari ambao wameua vijana wetu watafutwe wawekwe ndani.
Designation ya IG is not enough. We want this IG apelekwe Hague, apelekwe ICC. This is genocide in Kenya.
We want to support your dialogue. Na mimi nasema ya kwamba this dialogue must be people-centered. Lazima majensis wetu pia wahusishwe katika dialogue ili kuweze kupata suluhisho.
Mazungumzo yanapokuwako, tujue ya kwamba mazungumzo ni ya kumrudisha William Samoei Ruto kwa kiti. Kwa sababu wa Kenya wamemkataa. And I know this is a very difficult thing kwa wengine.
We have a country to protect. Let us work together. We have made mistakes along the way. And don't be cheated. We will also make mistakes as we go forward. There's no regime. There's no system. For as long as you're a human being, once in a while you stumble. Our forefathers were there. They did what they did. You cannot say they never made mistakes. They did make mistakes, but they held on to the country. We are here today. We shall make our mistakes, all of us. But the country must not go down with our mistakes.
All right, you've heard from the soapbox. The political tone and tenor of the country right now is all about dialogue. And you've heard from Senator Okiya Omtatah that we need to call him out as far as dialogue is concerned. And this is what he was talking about that has been aptly captured by Ozone. The D has been loading ever since the Moi regime. That was a dialogue. We have also the Kibaki regime as well. In Uhuru's times as well, there was a dialogue. And now the dialogue is with the current regime as well. This has been the script, but has the ground shifted? Everyone is asking that probing question. You heard from Raila, he said, no, we're not asking for Mugu here and Mukono there, but if the recent report is anything to go by, you should be all the wiser. And the cabinet as well, Anguka Nayo is the biggest headache for President William Ruto, as it's being depicted here. The cabinet literally, as you can see, everyone fell down. The question is, can some familiar faces be back? And we've heard from the sentiments also of the lawyers as well, debating on this particular issue. If there is a dismissal, it is on the account of incompetence. So if you're back, because this was applied with a broad, of course, stroke of brush there to all the cabinets, they were sent packing because of incompetence, so to speak. And in politics, no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, no permanent intersects. This is what Patience Johnson once said. And you can see the nemesis, the arch rival politically now, they're joining hands. And that is what Stano had drawn earlier. Role reversal and dialogue in today's publication of, this is GAMS actually, in today's publication of The Standard. But let's hear from Kipruto Rapkirwa, because his name has been doing round, so he can confirm for us this morning if he's been called. Are these rumors true? Or they're testing waters, right? Is it part of NIS to try and see what will be the feedback from the ground? And if this position is proffered to you, will you gladly take it?
Well, first of all, let's cross the bridge when we get there.
You can cross the bridge now if you have the information.
No, there's no bridge. There's no bridge. And let me say honestly, I've received a number of calls, not from State House, but from among Kenyans, some from my former constituency and a large part of Rift Valley. And many of them are very inquisitive that should you be offered the job, please accept it. That's what they told me, because it's not about you. It's about us, and it's about the regime of the day. Because they are seeing the onslaught on the president has gone beyond the borders that they expected. It is something that is threatening the foundation of their own democratic wishes. But as to whether my name was proposed by somebody I know, I'm not aware, because nobody has called me from State House, and nobody has even hinted that I should be in that particular position should the list come out. So I would rather we leave it there, but let me say the following. I'm more worried not about the list. I'm more worried about the way we have developed a bit of tribal inclination in the last couple of months. Any articles you see in various fora, you realize people are bitter with each other. We have almost polarized the country to the extent that people now are taking sides. You see an article in a certain forum, they are bitter about another community, they are bitter about another individual, to the extent that we need really to cool down the tempers and see how can we engage. As to whether we are going to engage between opposition and the government of the day, For me, it should be elevated above that, because I do not believe that the dialogue is supposed to be between two individuals. It should be national conversation, a situation that I've always promoted and supported. National conversation in the sense that let all players be given an opportunity to say something. Because this issue is not political. You could have resolved other issues in the past through grand coalition government, through cooperation between KANU and LDP at the time. Eventually it became a merger or a coalition, and the Honorable Raila Odinga became Secretary General of KANU before the fiasco in Kasarani. But for this one, it's not political, it's more on the issues of integrity, issues of leadership, issues of governance, and issues of exclusion from the resources of the nation. And for me, I think we need to spend more time talking about that and saying, how do we resolve these issues? So that even after this regime, whichever regime comes to town, will be respecting these are the basic requirements any government of the day ought to stick to. Because if you look at chapter 6, they talk of integrity, they talk of respect for the public, they talk of, and the people, they talk of instilling confidence in the people and improving trust on the government of the day by the behavior of the person holding that particular office, either as a state officer or a civil servant or a public officer. So those are the areas I wish we could engage in. As to whether I'm not the best, even in the Ministry of Agriculture, or in any other ministry for that matter, but I'll be listening and I'll be waiting. Should my name appear, I'll be able to come here and make a statement on the position I've taken.
Fantastic. Sure. Oh, maybe I'm also seated next to our would-be Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Dr. Isaac Green Kalua. Maybe I should proffer the same question to him as well, because you've been a stalwart of greening this country, and we've seen the president rallying call has been, you know, the Africa Green Initiative, sustainability and ESG, environmental social governance as well. That has been smack dab in the middle of your docket. Should you be proffered that particular gesture from the president to take that position, would you take it?
I am an entrepreneur, and my business needs me at most at the moment. I would offer the best for the country outside that space, for the good of the country and for posterity. And I believe that, it is not a matter of whether or who is going to be the cabinet minister or who is going to be this and that leader in this country. And I will try to bring out a few things, because it is on this platform that you have given me before that I have said, if President Ruto chose to become a one-term president, Kenyans would give him the next one. And I said that one time and left this place, Debal, to a phone call that was made to my wife, and I was told, wachana na hiyo story. And I'll try to explain what I have always meant. What is this that we are seeing? It's just an indication of so many things that have been happening. And I've been thinking deeply, what are these things? One, I have found out, Debal and team, that Kenya has only 4 houses. They are generational houses. The first house is the house of the greatest generation. These are the Wazees who fought for independence, they were part of World War. And what was special about them? One, they had leaders who were 35 years of age at that time. And the population had about 20 to 30 years. That was the average. So 20 to 30 were led by 35. And they did a great work, particularly in laying a foundation for education. The second house is a house that is very interesting. It's a house of boomers.
This is the generation that my brother may be part of, because it goes up to 65, 65 years of age. And this is the generation that changed this country, because that generation advanced matters of higher education. The interesting thing about the House of Boomers is that the leaders at that time were between 40 and 50 years. That being the situation, the population was 20 years. So 40, 50, led by 20 years. Mm-hmm. And it continued, and this is the team that really put a lot in terms of furthering education. The third house is the house which my age may be, because I'm 69 born, and therefore I'm part of Generation X, which goes up to about 1980, okay? This is the generation, our time, that we did a lot of effort in advancing in matters of IT, trying to create a basis where we could change IP whenever we went. Your computer would not get into the internet until you did something, you learned something. We advanced and got into that and brought that level to a very good level in terms of what needed to be done. Now, the question is, remember, 40 to 50, 20 years. And this is where the problem has been emanating from, that disconnect between the leaders and the ones who are being led. So during Generational X, leaders advanced to between 50 and 60 years. That was the average leadership. And the population was at mid-20s. Now, you can see where we are starting to lose it as a country, so that there is a disconnect. And finally, the fourth house, that I believe it is fourth, and it has two generations, is the generation, the millennium and the Generation Z. This time, we have maintained leadership, and these are the IT savvy people. They know how to do things by themselves, and now they are at the level where leaders at 50 to 60 years, and the average age is 19.6. Therefore, you can still realize that desperation of all these people. Now, those being the four houses that we have in this country, who are the occupants? And I'll finish with these four different occupants, so that we can bring everything into perspective. This thing is not about who is going where, who is doing what. We have to understand it in totality. The first occupants are Kenyans who are extremely eager to have good governance for their country. They are here in Kenya. What they care most is good governance, nothing more. The second group of Kenyans that we have is a team that I'll call legitimacy seekers. They are Kenyans who believe that President Ruto is not in power legitimately. And they are pained, and they don't want to see him there by all costs. He speaks, and there is nothing that gets into one and goes to the other. The third one is personal, people who are personal, I would call them personal benefactors. They say that our time is now. Our community, your community has been leading, and now we now have our community. It's a time not for Kalenjin, not for Kikuyus. It is our time. And there is nothing else. They just want to get that space. And the fourth group is the loyalists. People who love President Ruto, Damu. Whether he does what, it does not matter, because they are in power, and their dependency is in the leadership of President Ruto. Now, I tried to analyze and get deep into this. What percentages do we have of these people? So that now I finish and give guidance in this. One, I imagine that in the governance seekers, we only have about 25% of Kenyans. Just a figure that out of research I've been doing. In this group of legitimacy seekers, when you listen, is about 30% of Kenyans. In the group of personal seekers is about 20%. And in the category of the loyalists to President Ruto is about 20%. How do you deal with these people to bring them together? The Gen Zs are in two categories when I listen to them. And they are 50%. That category is 50%. Those who are seeking for good governance, they are about 25. And those who are seeking for, who are legitimacy challengers are 20%. If the government, if President Ruto, and he has given, God has given him an opportunity to deal, it is to deal with those two, because he already has the 20% loyalists. Forget about those who just want leadership for their own community and then lead the country in the best way and the best direction. How do you do that? One, he has an opportunity that no Kenyan can help him. Ruto must make his ways right with God. If there is something that God gave him a responsibility to deal with and he has deviated, it is only him who can help himself by seeking God, ask for forgiveness, and therefore at that point everything starts going in the right direction. Two, then to align everybody else within what Kenyans just want, a good job. And this is what I said, if he chooses to become a one-term president, the rest will follow so easily. And therefore it becomes very easy because he will take very bold decisions based on the Kenyans who are there, based on the four houses, based on the four groups, and the country will go at peace because the direction is very simple. It will not be an issue of you give me this, you give me that. It is about leadership at best, irrespective of regions, because that is what has always come up. You can attack these two groups or three in a very strategic manner.
Right, thank you.
That is what I would say.
All right. Barak Muluka, it seems only Ruto can save Ruto. And I think also Mutumu Matthew has written something in that regard as well. Just listening to those sentiments and maybe what you've been thinking about the whole scenarios that we've been having this week as well. I would like to hear from you before we get to some of the salient issues that have been raised regarding the formation of his cabinet, the slots. What are your thoughts?
I think in our globalized context, one appreciates that we are looking at this from the perspective that a new cabinet should be coming in place, that it's supposed to be a different cabinet in character from the cabinet that has been dismissed, and that we are trying to pave a new path to give the opportunity to the country to be reborn as the kind of country that Kenyans have dreamt of for the past 61 years, and that William Ruto is the custodian in the big house on the hill, and therefore the person who bears the greatest responsibility to restore us to their correct path. To that extent, I agree that only William Ruto can save William Ruto. And all of us, of course, can save Kenya from different vantages. Wherever we may be, we are playing our roles. And whether one gets called to cabinet is neither here nor there. When you look at the argument, I think we are sidestepping issues, especially when you listen to ODM and they're saying we need an all-embracing dialogue about government and where it should go. The contestation, the springboard of this contestation and what the Gen Z is saying is not about who is in government in terms of political or group formations, of the definitions of the kind that Dr. Kalua is describing. We have not had a moment in the recent past, say over the past 6 months, when ODM, for example, has been in contest against UDA on who is in government and who is excluded. And therefore, when they start talking about the need for dialogue and I don't know how many seats they are going to be given and how many seats should go to who, this is a perfect case of fishing in troubled waters, that we are seeing an expression and manifestation of relative deprivation, that the things which have been happening in government are not necessarily bad. What is bad is that we have not been there. And so we would like to be included in government, to be part of the bandwagon. And that must worry us. But it must also give us hope in the sense that if this government is a skunk, and ODM believes that they are the ones to get into that space to sanitize and gentrify that government, then the country is given an opportunity to sweep the whole lot and caboodle to the Indian Ocean without having to struggle to find ODM in one space, UDA in another space, ANC in another space, Ford Kenya in another space. You find all of them in one basket, and if you can take that one basket and throw it into the Indian Ocean, then you are fine. So only William Ruto can save William Ruto, and by doing the right things. The Gen Zs, and I'm looking at Gen Z not in terms of a certain chronological age, but in a more spiritualized context, that there is such a thing as Gen Z, because as I said earlier on, the struggle has been on for a very long time. People like J.M. Kariuki were fighting. University students from the 1970s, the 1980s, and the early 90s have fought. That spirit is still there. The spirit which when we were young people in high school, we used to hear some of the more progressive politicians, MPs, saying, you can kill J.M. Kariuki, but you cannot kill his spirit. That spirit is still awake, and that spirit is within the Gen Z population in the country. And that population has given a very clear catalogue of things that need to be addressed. Part of it has not been about a broad-based government, or howsoever one wants to euphemize this imminent formation of a government of national unity. That has not been the case. The case has been that the country is headed in the wrong direction. And that direction is not going to be diverted and restored to the correct path by bringing ODM into government. Musalia Mudavadi is wrong when he talks about people stumbling from time to time. In our case here, we are not stumbling from time to time. We have chosen from State House to place the country on a rocky path when smooth superhighways exist, and we could place ourselves on those smooth superhighways to the first world where this country belongs. And the onus on President Ruto's shoulders is to place us back on that road, which some of us thought 2 years ago that that was the path, that was the road that he was taking. But alas, there is a dark state that must be addressed, Ainea. There's a dark state. There's a deep state, and there is a dark state. And there's a dark state around the presidency. That dark state is the state that is wearing the balaclavas that we see in the streets of Nairobi, abducting people. As we talk about the cabinet and the formation of government, we must talk also about the dismantlement of the dark state around the presidency. Who are these dark state persons, this dark state entity? The fellows who go to the Attorney General with documents just seeking his signature, they have been processed elsewhere, and the Attorney General has got to gazette them. The fellows who are praised and worshipped even by the cabinet itself, by the deputy president, by all the ministers, who are these people? If we do not address informal government, it doesn't matter who is going to be in the cabinet.
Indeed, but I want just to follow through with the question because you raised pertinent issues on this panel. The sense of entitlement that we have with the political class in this country, that they have this neurosis that they think they can be given this preferential treatment even with these cabinet appointments against 50 million Kenyans who are well able, and even they have the intellectual provenance to prove themselves that they are qualified for these slots. How do we break away from this political class? Because I think this is a breaking point that we need to shove through right now and tell Kenyans that you are able, that we should not be brainwashed that these are the only figures that we've been, regurgitating all times through different dispensations of our political history. It's a high time that we want to see fresh faces. We've seen young guys really coming, very articulate, the way they convey their sentiments. You can see there's a broad sense of understanding of and grasping of issues. But as a nation, we've had this wave that is clouding and dimming our comprehension of our politics, that it has to be Raila Odinga, it has to be Mr. Oparanya, it has to be so and so. You're right? I'm just mentioning names, not particularly pointing fingers at these are the people. But I think this is a time to have a clean slate and say we need fresh faces. Maybe our trajectory of our politics will go dramatically on a very different direction at the end of the day. How do we break away from this neurosis? Because you can see this is a regurgitation. All 7 slots have been given, and the same names that will be trolled there again. We've heard elsewhere from another governor in another country saying that also the 8 slots that were there, that were preserved for that particular community in that country, should also just remain. And maybe this is the slots that have been taken. How do we break away from this?
I think President Ruto should be left with his skunk. We are not going to see a new cabinet, certainly not in spirit. It's going to be a kindred cabinet whose character is going to be very much like the character of the demised and disgraced cabinet. And I think for Kenyans to get away from that is to grant this president and the people around him the opportunity to navigate the ship of state to the harbor, the safe harbor that is 2027. And meanwhile, Kenyans of the Gen Z spirit should be mobilizing themselves in readiness to send this entire edifice home. And therefore, the more we see them regrouping, ostensibly to protect the status quo, the more they regroup, the more they come together, the happier we should be, because we now have the opportunity as a nation to deal with one entity. And therefore, the 2027 election becomes a referendum about continuity versus transformation.
All right. Let's hear from Professor Jonah Kindiki on this as well. I don't know, because they always say, Les Brown says that, you cannot see the picture if you are in the frame. And these people have not been seeing the picture for the longest time because they have been in the frame. You need to step out for you to see the frame, or for you to see the picture. Step out of the frame. so that you can see things clearly. Still, they want to be part of the frame, part of the picture of where they've been such a breakaway or a departure from the reality that is on the ground, where the center has not been speaking to the periphery. Your sentiments?
Yeah, thank you, Dibar. May pick that discussion from where you have stated that you can't see yourself unless you come out of the frame, but I want to say that that is subject of discussion. Depends with how many mirrors that are there and the position of the mirror. So it's relative. Depends what you want to say. If you are behind the mirror, you can't see yourself. But could be another mirror behind or in front or wherever. So it's debatable.
But this is not a mirror.
It is
this is a picture. This is a picture issue with the
the
frame.
other time I told you that I didn't talk when you were just giving the speech of mirrors. Allow me to be to give a logical analysis of picking from where you have left.
Okay, and not only that, Prof, he needs to learn how to deal with a proper Meru. They are not interrupted, and most are professors.
That is the challenge I get in this, but I like it anyway.
You are protected.
Okay. I've come to understand the kind of the debates that goes on here, and personally, I don't like taking things for granted or looking on one direction, but you have to look at several directions before you make a conclusion. And it's a very dangerous trend if you only look at one phase of the discussion or an idea of how you want to handle these national issues. Away from that, I was just trying to tease you anyway, don't worry. I understand you must come out of the frame so that you can see yourself. When I look at what is going on, there's a lot of profiling, bitterness, and people feel that when I look at Kenyans, when I say people, Kenyans, all of us are also included in that category. People start seeing those people there, and it's like there is a distance between, and people are having some groups. These groups may be not even physical, but ideological. And the ideological groups are very dangerous if they are not, well addressed. Because ideologies leads to people to act in a certain way. I look at the headline, the Standard this morning, and I picked the word scramble. The agency's effect and the scramble for cabinet. You see, I don't know, the appointment of these leaders at the category, at the level or the level of cabinet, because that's where now we have started, or that's where we are. These people, are they going to serve Kenyans and address the issues that Kenyans are trying to, they're trying to grapple with? They don't have the solution. That's why Gen Zs have raised these issues. And when you look at the word, and if you have to interrogate and try to scrutinize, it's like there's something, it's not enough, and people are really fighting for it so that they get part of it and hit it. Something like eating or getting some kind of enjoying, something which is not enjoyed by others. But I think if you look at Chapter 6 of the Constitution of this country about leadership and integrity, when you say that leaders should be selfless, that means you may not gain much from there, from even that appointment anyway. But when you see people scrambling for something, there is a reason. And I think I don't want to go there, I just leave it there. But I want to say that this is an opportunity that we need to embrace the conversation or the dialogue. And I think we need to promote and accept the call by the president that we needed to have a dialogue. But when you are invited for a conversation and you say, I don't want to be involved, then unless there's a different agenda, because this dialogue, as Gen Zs have put it, and if you have been reading the papers and we have been in this forum and this platform, they are talking about bad governance. And I think that's why the cabinet was, they were told to, and they were gazetted. They were sacked. May use the word sacking or maybe whatever.
Dismissed.
Dismissed.
Yes.
That's the word which was used. That the president said, have dismissed the cabinet. And they were gazetted because of not really personal, personal issues, but it was because of the issues which are raised by Kenyans. One of them, bad governance. The other one, youth unemployment. Another one, ballooning debt and corruption and tribalism. And I think dialogue and the conversation, which maybe the president is trying to initiate, is to address these issues. And I think we should also give him an opportunity, unless somebody else has a different agenda altogether. But if we recognize that he's our president, and he has opened up and he says, let's discuss. Even the Bible says that, come and let's reason together. That's the book of Isaiah. And that's God. The prophet Isaiah says that, and that's what God says, that when there's a crisis like this, let people come together and, and reason. But without reasoning, then you have no solution. So you go to a problem, to another problem. So I call Kenyans that we embrace the call for dialogue. The issue of scrambling won't be sorted out in the process, because you can't sort all these problems within one day. For any person, because we are human beings, we are limited to some extent. So we can start, for example, with where we have started with the cabinet, and then we give the president the opportunity to appoint the people that he thinks or you're convinced that they can work together. But we give them time also. And then we see whether these issues are being addressed. Because even you look at the Prime Cabinet Secretary, I said, people have spoken, we have listened, and we have heard. When a leader says like that, it says that they are embracing dialogue. So the issue of scrambling for this position actually should not really be the issue now, because already that's why the reason of scrambling for this position, that's why actually Gen Zs have complained, and that's why the cabinet was dismissed. And now they are reappointing a new lot. So I think sometimes in some circles, people might be too optimistic. The category of people who are optimistic that we can change, we can do many things within a short time, but then they don't succeed. But others are also very pessimistic, if I have to say, oh, this one cannot work. We know this one he cannot deliver. He comes from that region. I talk to Gen Z so much, and because I have them in the house, some of them in my house, I ask them, what is these issues you are talking about? They say, you dad, you are talking about people, watu wa mulima. What is watu wa mulima? We are not interested in watu wa mulima. What we're interested in is the opportunities that are there for us to advance to the next level, not watu wa mulima. They challenge me. That's a personal level. So you see, if you take that one and then you broaden it to many families, that is what Gen Zs are saying. We are not, here to talk about that tribe, that community, that word, but we want service delivery. And my call this morning is, can we give the leaders who are there the opportunity also to work? Because if you are too optimistic that this is going to work, then it may not work. Also, if you are too pessimistic that this cannot work, it may not. So we need some kind of balance of the conversations that are there, so that we promote the national conversation, so that we can reason together. Without reasoning, I think it will be a tall order to achieve some of these things, because if we use violence or other means, then it brings other things which are not called for. So I think going forward, one, let's have a national conversation, let's have a dialogue. Issues about scrabbling for this position should be a lesser thing to be discussed. Those who are, the opportunity, like we have seen those who are in the opposition, they say they want these lots. I don't know what for, but maybe they know better than me. But I think that should not be really the main subject.
Right.
But I think the people in this country, some of them want to take an opportunity and take the advantage of what is going on, and then to advance their selfish gains, not really for the country, but selfish gains. So let's have people who are qualified, people that meet the constitutional demands for Chapter 6 and other chapters of the Constitution, and let them go through that process.
Thank you.
And then the leaders and they see what we can. Otherwise, the direction people are taking when we don't come together and reason is not a good direction. And I think this is a thing we have to think twice.
Thank you. Think twice.
Let me talk about the
Yeah, sure. Let me just come to Honorable Kirwa and ask, because we stand ourselves as a country which is democratic. And we always know, they've always said, the wise ones, John Dewey, that, democracy begins in conversation. And the question I would proffer to us, since we're all talking about national dialogue and conversations and the negotiations, we are a democratic country. Conversation is the soul of democracy. Right now, as we're calling for a conversation or a dialogue, is what is being asked by Raila Odinga and his political operatives around him as well, is this the soul of democracy? Or, and another question I want just to add to that as well, or this also, his quest for this dialogue will be him putting his political career on a chopping board?
Yeah, it's very interesting, Dibal. The way I look at it, and I've been going through the history of this country, especially election cycles. Since independence, we have had 13 of them. And almost invariably after every election, and for lack of time, I'll not explain what happened from 64 up to 2022. But I just want to say it's only one election that the opposition remained opposition and the government of the day remained the government. That is the 2013-2018 election. But all others have been muddled up by either the government going to fish on the opposition benches or the opposition looking at the government through the window and wanting to join the government through the back door. That is where our main problem stems. We have not accepted that when you go for election, you either win and you form the government, and if you don't win, you go to the opposition and you play your role as responsible opposition, correcting the government where they make a mistake, or trying to applaud the government where you feel they have done the right thing. Now, this brings me to the second question, that for me, the cabinet that is going to be formed should be entirely the cabinet that President Ruto believes in, that this is the team I can work with for the next 3 years. The hand of those in the opposition should not be so visible. And if he was to get somebody from the opposition, let it be that he has chosen that from the opposition benches I can pick so and so to come and serve me and further the agenda that I have with the people of Kenya. That brings me to the question of Barack Muluka saying, let Raila join the president so that together they get an avalanche all the way to the sea and they die out of self-destruction because of lack of vision. The danger that I see, Dibal, is that should that be the case and should that be the perception that the government that is going to be formed or the cabinet is between Raila and President Ruto, where President Ruto is almost a co-president or Raila is a co-president, the issues that have been distilled by the GNCs will be lost in that political confusion. What is my suggestion? Let the cabinet be formed. Upon formation of the cabinet, the president will also do internal soul searching to see whether we need 51 permanent secretaries, principal secretaries, or do we need to reduce the number perhaps to about 35. And once that issue is settled, now we go to the issues that have been raised by GNCs starting with 1 up to 10 or 15, the number that we know. And we place them in some kind of grading. Those we can solve immediately, those which are mid-term, and those who require long-term. And for my suggestion, the Ministry of Youth Affairs should have a director of youth dealing exclusively with the issues that have been raised by young Kenyans. And in the intervening period, one of the quick wins, if there will be military recruitment, police recruitment, teacher recruitment, let them be distributed to sub-locations so that every place in Kenya feels our child has gone. Today, if there is recruitment in Cherangani or in Eldoret North or Soi, parents go there with money, knowing that after they have gone through what they call inspection about their health and so forth, or what they call medical tests, at about midnight, money will start parting hands between those who are recruiting and those whose children are supposed to be recruited. Now, I also wanted to persuade my good brother, Dr. Barak Muluka, that leadership is a blend. Perhaps the youngest cabinet that I know since the formation of all cabinets in Kenya by the 5 presidents is that of Jomo Kenyatta. It was the youngest in the sense that he had people who were at the age of 32 like Daniel Musyoka Mutinda, Chief Justice at the age of 30-something, the first African Chief Justice Kitili Mwendwa, people like Dr. Sakari Onyonga at the age of 29, he was a full minister. Kibaki was a minister at the age of 30-something. And in most cases, if you are to do the average age of that, they were under 40. Perhaps Jomo Kenyatta was privileged because those are people who had gone to school. But even today, we should have a blend because apart from that, there are people like Harvester Angaine who are above 50. And he was made a minister courtesy of delegation from Meru, that we don't have a minister and we are part of this struggle. And Angaine was elevated from assistant minister in the Ministry of Agriculture to full minister in lands and settlement, a position he occupied for such a long period. There were people like the later Koinange, who was like a advisor to the president. He was above 50. Njonjo became Attorney General when he was under 50. Of course, he got married at the age of 51 when he was there sitting Attorney General. So these are some of the stories that society is not about young or old. It should be a blend of all, so that you share in the wisdom and the experience and the failures we have gone through. To get to my age, you have made plenty of mistakes. To get to my age, you have made a lot of success. To get to my age, you have covered a lot of ground and you have something to offer. A young person is faster. He can wake up at 5, come to Nairobi, the way I used to do when I was first elected, go back by 6 o'clock, he's back in Cherangani. Today, to go to Kitale, I have to make it a ceremony. I have to pray for it.
It's because
before I
you're
start.
looking for a chopper.
Yeah.
I have no capacity to have a chopper.
It's a psychological preparation.
Yeah, preparation so that I know. So these are some of the things that as a nation, we must have effective national conversation. Sure. That's why I say conversation, because dialogue is more of you and I, plus another person listening.
Right.
But conversation means including all of us.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All right, the music is up. And it's a time for us to take a short break. And when we circle back, of course, we continue pace with the conversation, asking critical questions, especially where the Constitution is concerned with the people who have been shown the office right now, with the familiar faces coming back, and what we've been seeing on social media as far as the Constitution is concerned. Should they come back, some of the faces, especially them that they feel, you know, we forfeited our seats. We gave up for this particular cabinet, we sacrificed for this particular slots. Now it's a double whammy for them, right? Double whammy is in the negative or in the positive, or it can be applied. Yeah, all right. So we want to take a short break. When we circle back, of course, we shall be looking at that critical question and moving forward. They have said 23rd is when they will be occupying State House. We take a short break.